Alright, let's be honest. When you hear the word evolution, what's the first image that pops into your head? Is it a scruffy monkey slowly and painstakingly morphing into a human being? Maybe a caveman grunting and then suddenly inventing fire and filing his taxes? Or perhaps something more like a Pokemon leveling up montage, where a cute little creature suddenly evolves into a bigger, stronger, cooler version of itself. If any of those sound familiar, you're not alone. Most people still picture a neat, orderly, straight line of apes marching steadily towards some briefcase carrying, smartphone wielding future. That mental picture, it's not just simplified, it's flat out wrong. It's lazy, and frankly, it's keeping you from seeing one of the most incredible, awe-inspiring stories in the entire universe. In the next few minutes, we're going to absolutely shatter some of the biggest, most stubborn myths about evolution so cleanly, so thoroughly, that you'll never be able to unsee the real, sprawling, magnificent tree of life again. We humans, we just adore the idea of progress, don't we? We're constantly striving for taller skyscrapers, faster cars, smarter tech, richer bank accounts. It's ingrained in our culture, this relentless pursuit of better. So it's only natural, perhaps, that we project that same obsession onto the natural world. We assume nature must have the same goals: start small, end awesome. The classic March of Progress cartoon with a hunched ape gradually straightening into an upright human sticks in our collective consciousness precisely because it feels fair, it feels logical. It suggests a journey with a clear destination, a finish line where perfection awaits. But here's the cold hard truth. Evolution has no finish line. There's no ultimate goal, no grand design it's working towards. A sloth, for example, isn't some half-baked underachieving cheetah that's still waiting for its upgrade. No, a sloth is a sloth, and it's embarrassingly, hilariously good at being a sloth. It excels at hanging motionless, blending into the canopy and being so incredibly slow that jaguars often just snack on something else because chasing a sloth isn't worth the effort. Its fitness isn't about speed or strength, it's about not being eaten and successfully making more sloths. In evolutionary terms, fitness is just shorthand, a pragmatic, unsentimental label for leaves more babies in this exact location right now. That's it. It's not about being the strongest, the smartest, or the prettiest. It's about reproductive success in a specific environment. When that environment changes, yesterday's superhero can very quickly become today's punchline. The fossil record is absolutely littered with the remains of spectacular winners who overnight turned into spectacular losers. Think about those giant armadillos, the glyptodonts, the size of small cars, or the massive sea reptiles like mosasaurs with bite forces that dwarfed even a T-Rex, or plants that thrived only in one particular valley, which later dried up or was paved over. They were perfectly adapted, perfectly fit for their world, until that world wobbled, until the climate shifted, or a new predator arrived, or their food source vanished. Their perfection became their downfall. So if you're sitting there patiently waiting for evolution to hand humans bigger brains, a more efficient metabolism, or perhaps even faster Wi-Fi, you might want to ask yourself, does a bigger brain actually lead to more babies in a world already overflowing with nappies, student debt, and the endless scroll of YouTube shorts? If a trait doesn't boost reproductive success even by a tiny fraction, natural selection simply shrugs. It doesn't care about your personal aspirations or what you consider progress. Evolution isn't a self-improvement guru, it's a ruthless accountant that only cares about who cashes the final dividend. The grandchildren and great-grandchildren and so on. It's a system that rewards survival and reproduction, not aspiration. This is arguably one of the most persistent and frustrating myths out there, and it's often weaponized to disprove evolution with a simplistic question. If humans came from monkeys, why are they still monkeys? And so let's clear this up once and for all. Repeat after me, slowly and clearly. Chimpanzees are not our ancestors. Gorillas are not our ancestors. Monkeys are not our ancestors. They are our very, very distant cousins. We share a common ancestor, a deep familial connection, but they are not the direct linear predecessors in our evolutionary story. Think of it this way. Roughly 7 million years ago, give or take a million years, there was a single population of apes living somewhere in Africa. This ancient ape was neither a modern chimpanzee nor a modern human, but a species that was ancestral to both. Then, for reasons likely tied to environmental changes, perhaps a shifting climate that fragmented forests and created new savannas, that single population split. One branch of that family tree stayed primarily in the dense forests, continuing to climb trees and feast on fruit. Over millions of years, that lineage eventually led to modern chimpanzees and bonobos. The other branch ventured out into the emerging savannas, experimenting with walking upright, sweating more efficiently, and eventually, for better or worse, arguing on the internet. That lineage led us to Homo sapiens. Both branches are still here, still thriving in their own ways. So asking why are there still monkeys or why are there still chimps if we evolved from them is exactly like asking, if I came from my cousin, why is my cousin still alive? You didn't come from your cousin, did you? You and your cousin share grandparents. You both descended from those grandparents, but you took different paths, started your own families, and here you both are, still very much alive. So replace grandparents with common ancestor, replace family reunion with ancient African forest, and the whole thing stops sounding impossible. It actually starts making perfect sense. And here's a bonus reality check that might make you squirm a little. You are literally an ape, not metaphorically, not as some kind of insult. Taxonomically, scientifically, you, me, all of us, we belong to the family Hominidae, which is the great ape family. This family includes orangutans, gorillas, chimpanzees, bonobos, and us. But wait, it gets even more humbling. Not only are you an ape, you are also, scientifically speaking, a monkey. The scientific group that contains all monkeys is called the simians or anthropoids. Apes, including us, are just a branch within that monkey family tree. Cladistically, that means every ape is a monkey, which means you are a monkey. There are no loopholes, no special exceptions for our species. So embrace your inner ape. It's a fascinating, humbling, and entirely accurate part of your identity. Survival of the fittest. It's a catchy phrase, isn't it? Coined by Herbert Spencer, not Charles Darwin, and unfortunately it's been misinterpreted and misapplied for generations, often by gym bros and self-help gurus who think fittest means can bench press the most. In biology, however, fit has absolutely nothing to do with bulging muscles or brute strength. In biology, fit means fits like a key in a lock into a specific environment. It's about how well an organism's traits allow it to survive and, crucially, reproduce in its particular niche. Consider the male anglerfish. This creature is the absolute antithesis of strong in any conventional sense. It's tiny, often barely able to swim independently. Its survival strategy? Well, it latches onto a female, literally biting into her flesh. Over time, his mouth fuses to her body. His circulatory system merges with hers, and most of his organs atrophy, melting away until he's little more than a parasitic living sperm vending machine, providing gametes on demand. Is that strong? Is that powerful? No, it's bizarrely incredibly efficient at making more anglerfish. It's an extreme form of reproductive success tailored to the vast, dark, empty expanses of the deep ocean where finding a mate is a lottery. Contrast that with the alpha elephant seal. This massive, blubbery beast spends its days body slamming rivals, roaring and defending its harem of females. It's the picture of brute strength and dominance. But what happens if during one of those brutal fights a single shark bite gets infected? Or if a particularly harsh winter means fewer fish and his massive energy demands can't be met? His strength, his dominance, suddenly counts for very little. He might be the strongest, but if he can't pass on his genes, he's not fit in the evolutionary sense. Strength is context dependent, so is speed. Intelligence, camouflage, the ability to digest fast food wrappers, a surprisingly useful trait in some environments, or the capacity to withstand extreme temperatures. The only scoreboard that truly matters in evolution is offspring that live long enough to have offspring of their own. Everything else, all the flashy displays of power or speed, is just commentary. If you want a truly humbling thought, remember this. 8 million years of brute domination, sophisticated tools, and brains bigger than our own did not save the Neanderthals. Our stocky, resilient cousins, who were perfectly adapted to Ice Age Europe, ultimately faded away when Homo sapiens arrived on the scene. We, with slightly less powerful bodies but arguably better social networks, more adaptable toolkits, and a knack for cooperation, outcompeted them. It wasn't about who could lift the heaviest rock, it was about who could navigate a changing world and leave more descendants. Evolution doesn't care about your bicep circumference, it cares about your legacy in the gene pool. This one is a classic, often delivered with a dismissive wave of the hand, implying that theory means wild guess or unproven hunch, and it's a deeply misleading misunderstanding of how science actually works. Let's be clear, gravity is also just a theory. So is the idea that germs cause disease or that continents drift across the surface of the Earth. When scientists use the word theory, they're not talking about a half-baked idea you mumble after 2 beers in a bar. In science, a theory is an absolute pinnacle of explanation. It's a comprehensive, well-substantiated and rigorously tested framework that explains a broad range of facts and observations. It's stitched together from thousands, if not millions, of independently tested facts, experiments, and pieces of evidence. A scientific theory provides predictive power, allowing us to make accurate forecasts about what we expect to observe in the natural world. Evolution, as a scientific theory, is one of the most robust and well supported concepts in all of science. It has been observed in real time, not just in petri dishes, but out in the wild, playing out before our very eyes. Take the Italian war lizards. In 1971, a small population was accidentally dropped onto a tiny lizard-free island called Podmakaru. In just 30 years, a blink of an eye in evolutionary terms, these lizards developed entirely new gut structures, including cecal valves, to help them digest tough plant material which was abundant on the new island, but scarce on their original home. Their heads grew larger, their bite force increased, and they even started exhibiting different social behaviours. That's rapid evolution in action. Or consider the Florida anole lizards. When introduced to islands with higher vegetation, they quickly developed longer legs to navigate the taller plants. But then, when predators forced them back onto narrow twigs and branches, their leg strength shortened again, adapting to the new challenge. This isn't just adaptation, it's measurable, observable evolutionary change. And perhaps most chillingly, we've witnessed evolution in our own hospital wards. Bacteria, those microscopic masters of adaptation, have evolved resistance to every single antibiotic we've thrown at them, often within years of a new drug's introduction. We're talking about real-time evolution happening live under fluorescent lights, and it's absolutely terrifying. This isn't speculation, it's constant, urgent battle. The evidence for evolution doesn't just come from these direct observations, it lines up like an endless chain of dominoes from every corner of biology. The fossil record, which documents life's changing forms over eons, genetics, which reveals the shared ancestry and mechanisms of inheritance, biogeography, showing how species distribution reflects evolutionary history, embryology, which highlights developmental similarities between vastly different organisms, and countless direct lab experiments. Saying evolution is just a theory in 2025 is like saying that the internet is just a fad. It stopped being cute decades ago, now it just sounds uninformed. This myth is a stubborn one, perhaps because it taps into a very human desire for self-improvement and the idea that our efforts can directly shape our descendants. But here's the reality check. Lifting weights at the gym, no matter how dedicated you are, doesn't make your kids automatically muscular. Spending hours tanning in the sun won't result in a naturally tanned baby. The traits you acquire during your lifetime, whether they're bulging biceps, intricate tattoos, or even a PhD from a prestigious university, do not and cannot magically recode the DNA in your sperm and egg cells. That's simply not how inheritance works. Evolution operates on populations, not on personal bucket lists or individual aspirations. The changes that drive evolution happen at the genetic level, specifically through mutations. These mutations are random, accidental copying errors that occur during the replication of DNA in sex cells, sperm and eggs. Most of these mutations are either neutral, having no effect, or they are outright harmful, but every once in a while a mutation pops up that happens to be helpful, offering a slight advantage in survival or reproduction. If that helpful mutation boosts an individual's reproductive success, even by a tiny 0.5%, it will slowly, gradually become more common in the population over many generations. This is precisely why doctors are so insistent that you finish every course of antibiotics. Even if you start feeling better, you want to kill every last bacterium in your body. If you stop early, the weakest bacteria die off, but the slightly more resistant ones, the ones with a lucky mutation, survive. They then multiply, and suddenly you have a population of bacteria that are all resistant to that antibiotic. If individuals could evolve, one single superbug could train itself into existence overnight, learning to resist that drug. But that's not what happens. Instead, antibiotic resistance bubbles up in huge bacterial populations over many generations, as selection favours those with pre-existing advantageous mutations. It's the same story for every pesticide-resistant insect, every vaccine-escape variant of a virus, and every crop pest that seems to laugh in the face of yesterday's poison. The change is statistical, a shift in gene frequencies across a population, not a heroic individual transformation. The French naturalist Jean-Baptiste Lamarck famously believed that giraffes stretched their necks to reach the higher leaves and then passed on those gains to their offspring. Darwin, however, showed us the true mechanism. Junior only inherited whatever genes helped mum or dad survive long enough to make Junior in the first place. The environment selects from existing variation, it doesn't create it on demand. If any of these myth busts made you blink twice or even do a double take, then you absolutely need to hit that subscribe button. It's a common misconception that with modern medicine, technology, and our ability to shape our environment, humans have somehow stopped evolving. As if we're the finished product, the grand finale of a long, winding show. But nothing could be further from the truth. We are not the end game, we are just another twig on that sprawling tree of life. A twig that happens to be photosynthesizing on camera right now. Human evolution is ongoing, and sometimes it's happening at lightning speed. Consider the people of the Tibetan Plateau. For thousands of years, they've lived at altitudes where oxygen levels are significantly lower than at sea level. Unlike lowlanders, who move to high altitudes and develop altitude sickness or produce more red blood cells, which can be risky, Tibetans carry a specific allele, a variant of the EPAS1 gene. This genetic tweak allows them to use oxygen more efficiently at the cellular level, without the negative side effects. This adaptation spread through the Tibetan population in under 3,000 years, which by evolutionary standards is an incredibly rapid pace. It's a powerful testament to ongoing natural selection. Another fascinating example comes from the Bajar people, often called sea nomads, who live across Southeast Asia. Their traditional lifestyle involves extensive free diving for fishing and foraging. Research has shown that Bajar children and adults have spleens that are, on average, 50% larger than those of neighbouring land-dwelling populations. This larger spleen acts as a natural oxygen reservoir, allowing them to hold their breath for significantly longer periods underwater, for up to 5 minutes or more. This genetic and physiological adaptation is a direct result of generations of selective pressure linked to their unique diving culture. And then there's lactase persistence, the ability for adults to digest lactose, the sugar in milk. For most mammals, including humans, historically, the enzyme lactase shuts down after infancy, but in populations across Europe, part of Africa, and the Middle East, this ability evolved independently multiple times. Why? Because as these societies adopted varied farming, individuals who could digest milk as adults had a significant nutritional advantage. They could access a rich source of calories and nutrients, especially in times of scarcity, leading them to leave more surviving offspring. Our culture, our technology, our medicine, they don't stop the evolutionary game. They simply change the rules and introduce new selective pressures. The advent of agriculture, urbanization, global travel, and even our diet are all subtly shaping our gene pool. CRISPR gene editing, in vitro fertilization, and the distant prospect of space colonies won't halt natural selection, they'll just give it new toys to tinker with, new environments and challenges to select for. Human evolution is a continuous journey, not a destination we've already reached. Sections. The idea that gaps in the fossil record somehow invalidate evolution is another common talking point used by people who don't understand evolution. The argument often implies that if evolution is true, every single transitional form should be neatly laid out for us to find like pages in a textbook. But this misunderstanding ignores the incredibly rare and specific conditions required for fossilization. Think about it. Fossilization is a lottery level rare event. For an organism to become a fossil, a whole cascade of unlikely events has to occur. First, the remains need to be buried quickly, shielding them from scavengers and decomposition. Then they need to be in an environment rich in minerals, allowing for permineralization, where minerals seep into the bone and tissue, turning it into stone. Next, they need to remain undisturbed by geological processes, no earthquakes, no volcanic eruptions, no erosion, for millions of years. And finally, after all that, a paleontologist has to actually bother to look in the right place and discover it. Given these astronomical odds, it's a miracle we have any fossils at all, let alone a complete record. Despite these immense challenges, we have found an astonishing number of transitional forms, those incredible snapshots of evolution in progress that certain groups of people once claimed would never show up. Take Tiktaalik, often called the fisherpod. This incredible creature, discovered in the Canadian Arctic, has fins with wrist-like bones and sturdy ribs, but also fish-like scales and gills. It's a perfect bridge between fish and early tetrapods. Then there's Archaeopteryx, a marvel blending reptilian and avian features. Dinosaur-like teeth and a long, bony tail, alongside fully formed feathers and wings, a clear link between dinosaurs and birds. And don't forget Ambulicetus, the walking whale. This ancient whale ancestor had powerful legs, suggesting it could both walk on land and swim, providing a crucial piece of the puzzle for how whales evolved from land-dwelling mammals. We also have an increasingly rich fossil record of early hominins, tracing our own lineage back through various bipedal ape-like species. So yes, gaps exist, but they exist because the record is inherently patchy, incomplete and difficult to access, not because evolution took cigarette breaks or because species magically appeared fully formed. Every new fossil discovery, every new bone on Earth shrinks a gap somewhere, adding another piece to the puzzle. And the gaps that remain are increasingly being filled in by another powerful tool, DNA. Genomics allows us to peer into the past without waiting for stone bones. We can measure evolutionary distance down to a single letter of genetic code, reconstructing family trees and confirming relationships with incredible accuracy. The tree of life isn't missing, we're just continually adding more intricate and beautiful ornaments to its branches. This is a critical distinction that often gets muddled, leading to unnecessary confusion and argument. Evolutionary theory explains how life changes and diversifies after it already exists. It describes the mechanisms by which populations adapt, new species arise, and biodiversity flourishes over countless generations. What it does not explain is how life originated from non-life in the first place. That is an entirely separate, albeit equally fascinating scientific question. The origin of life, a field known as abiogenesis, is a distinct scientific discipline. It's the study of how non-living chemical compounds could have assembled and organized themselves into the very first self-replicating biological systems. Researchers in fields like chemistry, molecular biology, and astrobiology are working to understand this incredible leap from geochemistry to biochemistry. They explore hypotheses involving deep-sea hydrothermal vents, primordial soups, clay minerals, or even extraterrestrial delivery via comets. These are complex, cutting-edge areas of research, but they are fundamentally different from the study of evolution. Think of it this way. Evolution is the app that kicks in once life already exists and starts copying itself imperfectly. It's the software that dictates how a lineage adapts and changes over time. Abiogenesis, on the other hand, is about the hardware. It's about how the first biological machine capable of replication and heredity was bootstrapped into existence. Whether the first spark of life happened in a bubbling chemical cauldron deep within a volcanic vent, or perhaps even arrived on Earth from a distant comet, evolution took the baton the moment heredity and variation showed up. Once organisms could reproduce, pass on traits, and those traits could vary, natural selection had something to work with. Confusing the two is like asking a traffic officer to explain how cars are manufactured. The traffic officer can tell you about how cars move, how they interact, the rules they follow, and how they change lanes. That's evolution. But asking them about the assembly line, the engine design, or the processes involved in making the car, that's abiogenesis. Both are crucial, both are scientific, but they address different fundamental questions about life. Another common misrepresentation of evolution is the idea that it's all just random chance. This often conjures images of a cosmic dice roll, suggesting that complex organs like eyes or brains simply popped into existence by accident, and while randomness certainly plays a crucial role in evolution, it's only half the story, and arguably the less influential half when it comes to shaping adaptation. Yes, mutations are random. They are accidental changes in DNA, like generating a million typos in a novel. These typos happen without any foresight, without any intention to be good or bad. A mutation doesn't arise because an organism needs it, it just happens. Most of these typos are meaningless, some are harmful, and a very, very tiny fraction might, by sheer luck, turn out to be beneficial in a particular environment. But here's where the non-random part of the equation comes in. Selection. Natural selection is a literary agent in our novel analogy, and it is ruthlessly, brutally non-random. From those million random typos, the agent only approves, preserves, and amplifies the sentences that genuinely improve the plot, that make the story more compelling, that help the novel, the organism, survive and reproduce. It's a filtering process, an editorial hand that, over vast stretches of time, sculpts complexity and adaptation from raw, undirected variation. Consider a simple example. Imagine a population of bacteria. Random mutations occur in their DNA all the time. Some mutations might make them slightly less efficient, some might do nothing, and some might, by chance, make them slightly more resistant to an antibiotic. When that antibiotic is introduced, it doesn't randomly kill bacteria, it selectively kills the non-resistant ones. The resistant ones survive, reproduce, and pass on their advantageous mutation. The environment, the antibiotic, is doing the selecting, and the selection is anything but random. Given enough paper, enough genetic variation, and enough time, enough generations, you don't get word salad, you get Shakespeare. Nature, of course, isn't aiming for Shakespeare. It's not striving for aesthetic perfection or moral grandeur. It's simply shredding every draft that fails to sell copies, every organism that fails to survive and reproduce effectively in its environment. The combination of random variation and non-random selection is what drives the incredible diversity and adaptation we see in the living world, creating intricate designs without an intelligent designer. So, let's pull back and look at the grand picture, freed from those persistent myths. Evolution is not a ladder of progress, not a linear climb towards some predetermined apex. It's not about making things better in some absolute sense, nor is it a purely random free-for-all. Instead, evolution is a messy, sprawling, endlessly branching and fundamentally directionless process. It doesn't have a plan, it possesses no morals, it has no finish line, and it certainly has no obligation to make intuitive sense to a human brain that, let's be honest, evolved primarily to throw rocks and gossip. The picture isn't a straight line from ape to human. It's a colossal ancient tree with countless twigs, branches and roots. Most of those twigs are dead ends, representing species that went extinct. But a few are budding right now, including ours. We are just one tiny, relatively recent sprout on an unimaginably vast and ancient biological structure. Understanding this doesn't diminish human dignity or our unique place in the world. Quite the opposite, in fact. It amplifies our sense of wonder. It connects us to every other living thing on this planet in a profound and tangible way. Every species alive today, from the smallest bacterium to the largest whale, is our distant cousin, a fellow traveller on this incredible journey, not some checkpoint we've surpassed. And that realization makes the astounding biodiversity of Earth not just a scientific curiosity, but a family reunion worth cherishing and fiercely protecting. It makes our existence all the more precious and remarkable. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into demythologizing one of the science's most misunderstood concepts, and if this perspective has shifted your understanding, then please do me a favour. Share this video with the next person you encounter who still thinks evolution is a straight line. And smash that like button, because algorithms, like natural selection, love engagement. And of course, subscribe for more science that consistently proves reality is not only cooler than fiction, but also far more intricate and astonishing than we often imagine. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.